Welcome to Microdose the Mind, where tiny doses create monumental shifts. We're your hosts, Brian Schwartz and Jeremy Wolf, and we're here to guide you through the fascinating world of microdosing, both in plant medicine and daily habits. Get ready to expand your mind and reshape your reality.
Tribe. I was reminded the other day to be grateful. I don't care who you are, what you're going through in life. I guarantee you that if you look deep enough, you will in fact find something that you could be grateful for. In fact, I bet you there's somebody out there right now that has everything that you want that would give it up in an instant to have something that you have. So let's just remember that we are incredibly blessed and fortunate to have this life. Today's guest is Brandon Barkley. Brandon is a transformational wellness practitioner. He's a community builder and a partner at Temple Medicine right here in South Florida. He brings over 13 years of experience in traditional plant medicine and a background in finance and systems. Brandon bridges the principles of ancient wisdom with modern practical frameworks for real sustainable transformation. He also serves as the steward of South Florida Psychedelic Society, where he's built a thriving community focused on safe, intentional growth. Brandon, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. Brian, good to see you up there in the wilderness, in nature in Orlando. Always a pleasure to see you, brother.
Yes, brothers. Blessings for all. And Brandon, nice to connect with you, brother.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thanks, Brian.
Aho, baby. All right, well, let's get into it. Brandon, you've been immersed in this space for well over a decade, if not longer. So I want to go back. I want to go in the way back machine. What was it that originally pulled you into the work? And what was it that you were searching for at the time?
Yeah, it's a great question. I had experimented with psychedelics and went through a party phase in my 20s, so that world of altered states was not foreign to me. Spent 6 years going to Burning Man and found myself tired from all of that, from that world, really. And I had started to kind of step away and take a break. I was realizing that I was looking for something and I didn't know exactly what it was. I started kind of the search for spirituality, and my first exposure to that was actually through a sweat lodge out in Hood River. Really beautiful community. And the sweat it opened something for me that I guess I would call it a curiosity. There was like a deep resonance with the sweat, with the songs, with the community, and a feeling of being nourished that I hadn't really been getting anywhere else. So that kind of started this path of seeking, and the ant farm, where they were the hosts of that sweat, really cool community and project that they had out there. And I got exposed to another woman who was running a sweat a little bit closer into Portland. I was in the world of corporate and banking and finance at the time. And as this kind of progressed, this kind of interest or seeking something spiritual, I started to have some physical challenges with my body. And it was something that I hadn't experienced before. And I went to a couple of different doctors, naturopaths, got diagnosis, but something still felt off. I was invited to, and somewhat encouraged to attend an ayahuasca ceremony. Mm-hmm. And I felt like the timing was right. I'd been hearing about ayahuasca for years, different communities. It never really clicked. I wasn't called, at the time. And when this invitation was extended, I was like, okay, I have something going on in my body that I need some support with. The alignment is here. I have the ability to engage and take the time to engage in this set of ceremonies. And so I took that opportunity. And I was new to that world of ceremony with plant medicine, and I showed up. I laugh thinking about it because I I'd been journaling and, doing the preparations, and
Hmm.
I had like 2 pages of intentions that I was showing up to that ceremony with. And I remember before that first night, I asked to come up to our facilitator who was running the ceremonies, and he's like, "Yeah, sure, come on up." And I sit down, and I've got my journal, my notebook, and I was like, "I'd like to share my intentions with you." And he's like, "Oh, okay, And I start reading this laundry list of things, and by the time I got through it, I was like, okay, nobody else is doing this. I almost felt a little embarrassed, right? And there was so much there that I was trying to pack in to one night. So the ceremony continues to unfold. Finally go up to drink the medicine, right? And I'm sitting there with the cup in my hand, and I realize the thing that I'm really there for is a physical healing. And so I really set that intention in that moment, took that first drink, and to spare the details of the experience, I got what I was asking for, and I that physical healing came, and part of what came with it was the awareness that my work needed to change. That being in finance, the job that I had at the time was not working for my body. Actually, I was under a lot of stress, and it became very clear to me that this was not going to be able to continue to fulfill me. So that was really the beginning for me, and my exposure to the power and the healing that plant medicine can bring. That first night was very challenging for me. Fortunately, the second night was very uplifting and beautiful, and kind of balanced out, the kind of difficulty or the challenge of that first night. And and then it was pretty much on for me. I got so much out of that weekend. The community, there was a sweat involved with that set of ceremonies also, and I was just in. Every time that practitioner came back to the Pacific Northwest, I wanted to be there. Anything that I could do, to participate, and then started to support. That support just kind of turned into being more involved with the organization of the ceremonies, and that was kind of the beginning of that work for me.
I know, Brian, you're probably sitting over there thinking there are so many parallels to the story he just told to your own journey. And I want you to chime in on this because you've lived a similar experience and you've shared it on the podcast before, but take us through from your lens, what you just heard.
Sure. Thank you, Brandon, for sharing that story with me. Yeah, I know we have similar experiences in terms of, I was suffering some health issues, physical health issues, autoimmune conditions. I was also in a corporate finance position down in South Florida, and my body began to shut down. My body shut down, and I didn't quite know what was going on. I just knew that something wasn't working in my life. And like you, I have a background in psychedelics when I was younger, and never
Mm-hmm.
really in a ceremony setting per se with intention, more for fun and for spiritual exploration. But I found myself searching for something as well. When it turns out I was searching for myself, and my first experience was with Kambo, actually, the frog secretion from the Amazon. And the combo really was able to kind of bring my physical body into homeostasis. I was able to kind of, stop most of the prescriptions I was taking. I started some psychotherapy as well at the time. And I got called to ayahuasca as well. And my first ceremony was very similar to yours. I showed up with a laundry list of intentions, right? And I got what I was looking for. And what I needed was not my intentions. It was something completely different that I was not searching for. Um, I love how you say I took my first cup of ayahuasca. Well, my experience, the ayahuasca took me. And yeah, my first night of drinking ayahuasca was hands down the most terrifying experience of my life, um, as well as the most beautiful experience of my life. And this medicine continues to just fascinate me, how we can be in such a state of fear and terror 1 second, and then like that, we're in samsara, we're in bliss, we're in heaven, we're in this divine space of just love. And yeah, I've continued to seek as well. I'm deep in this world. I've been practicing. I've been a shamanic practitioner since 2019, certified in serving combo. And I teamed up with Jeremy, and we started doing men's retreats, and we introduced plant medicine to the retreats. We're in this space of personal growth and healing. So thank you for sharing. I'm very excited to get more in this conversation and find out, more in detail about what your experience was, what exactly, happened with you physically, and how are you feeling today?
Well, beautiful. It's always nice to meet somebody that's got kind of a parallel story, and understands how strong the medicine can be and how incredible, the work can be in somebody's life. What was happening for me at the time was I had acute psoriasis show up. I'd never had psoriasis before in my life, and I had it all over my body. And it was on my, I had, what do they call them? They're like patches, all on my face, everywhere. So that was the physical issue that I was going through, and I was freaked out, and I was just learning that this is an autoimmune issue. There were some other indications from things that happened in my past that I might have underlying autoimmune stuff going on. And what was amazing, part of what was amazing getting introduced to the medicine was it brought me into relationship with other plants and foods in a new way. One of those was cannabis. I'd been a long time cannabis user, heavy, right, since I was like 14. And working with ayahuasca brought to my awareness what right relationship with a plant looks like.
Yep.
And just the consciousness that we're engaging with a spirit, with a consciousness. And so it really helped me take a look at and step back from that relationship with cannabis. But it did that with food also. And my diet was something at the time that I was not making it easier on my body unconsciously. I ate well, we're in the Pacific Northwest. We have farm to table food, like amazing, access to good food out there. And so it wasn't the quality of the food, but it was food that wasn't working for my body. And working with the medicine helped really bring that forward, and that change in my diet changed the expression of my body. Once the psoriasis finally dissipated, it's never been back.
That's powerful stuff, man. I got to say, there are quite a few parallels in my own journey with what you're talking about in terms of the relationship, specifically the relationship with cannabis that you just mentioned. I too was a cannabis user for much of my life, and I stopped for a while, and I started taking it again, and I found myself taking it as an out, as a crutch, right? I would get through my day, and I'd always eat like an edible at night. And I realized through the work that I needed to stop using it as an escape mechanism and use it more with intention. So now when I take these various medicines, it is always with deep, deep intention. And it is never just for the sake of taking it. And I think going back to what we said about getting into these experiences, one of the things that I've noticed that a lot of people struggle with is they go away, and whether it's to a retreat, whether it's to another setting, and they have an unbelievable experience with something like ayahuasca or psilocybin, and they have this breakthrough experience, but then they go back home and they plug into their old patterns, their old programs, all the things that they were having problems with before. And oftentimes they fall harder. And there's this lack of integration. There's a lack of framework. There's a lack of information, education out there about the integration process as it pertains to this thing. And I think it's a little bit dangerous when we tell these stories about how we have an experience and then we realize the light bulb goes off and we realize that we're not happy in our life. We need to make changes. You hear a lot of people talking about how people make abrupt changes in their life, and sometimes they're not necessarily the best course of action. How do we distinguish, like for somebody that's a brand new user that goes out and has this incredible, profound, deep spiritual experience, leaves the experience and then goes back and decides they want to completely blow up their life, right? They need to leave their marriage, they need to change their job. And maybe that's not exactly the answer to do that right away. In your case, Brandon, it seems that it was. How do we mitigate against making, in some cases, serious mistakes on the path that we're on?
It's a great question. I came back from that first weekend of ceremonies and I wasn't sure how I was going to go back to work on Monday. Like it was so clear to me that I needed to change what I was doing, that I was concerned about even being able to go back to work. And fortunately my partner who was with me at the time and there for the ceremonies was like, listen, I support you in quitting your job and making a transition, and you need to have a plan. And I was like, okay, I took the advice. It was sound advice. And that plan took a year and a half to unfold, actually. Because what it meant for me was that I was going to leave a career. I
Mm.
was the breadwinner. I had super stable, W-2 income, good vacation time banked, all of those things. And so I really needed to have a plan and be prepared for what it was going to mean to eliminate my income as I knew it at the time. And so that was great advice. One, have a plan. In working with some of the different indigenous traditions and cultures, for example, with the Dene or the Navajo and the Native American Church, they really emphasize on taking 4 days, that even after the ceremony, you're still in the process for 4 days. So not to have any fast emotions, right? Not make any big decisions, not make any big changes, and be really good to yourself for those 4 days after a ceremony. And I think that that is something that can apply to any type of medicine work. And even that alone, you give yourself that space to let the experience continue to settle, let your body continue to adjust to that new frequency or calibration. And I think some of those fast emotions, the medicine can make things feel urgent.
Hmm.
And I've had this experience time and time again, been in a ceremony, and it feels so urgent. Like it needs to happen right now. And when we can let that feeling kind of dissipate, right, at that heightened state dissipate, and really let what's underneath of that come forward, I think then we're in a much better place to make good decisions that are grounded and rooted, in our best interest.
What did that shift look like for you, Brandon, when you decided you came home from that experience and you said, I need to make a change? You talked to your partner, came up with a plan. What was the plan? What was the work that you shifted into at that point?
So I had developed a business plan to turn two properties that I had a connection to in Southwest Portland into a retreat, or what I was calling a rejuvenation center.
Hmm.
And the business plan was called the Story Center, and it was going to be a refuge or a space for people who are going through intensive care, to be able to go and have treatments, to be able to stay, have really good food, massage, acupuncture, hot pools, saunas, that type of thing. So kind of what you would get from maybe a retreat center, but catered to people who are going through cancer treatment or similar types of treatment, and their families. I had just lost a really good friend to cancer, and she was very young. And so that was the motivation for creating this center, and I had kind of named it after her. And I had gone through the process of working with the city and understanding all the zoning and whether I was going to be able to do this project. And I got to the point where I needed money.
Mm.
And I was doing all of this while I was working at the bank. This is like my passion project. And I wasn't comfortable asking for money. I needed basically $1 million to buy these 2 pieces of property, update them, and get them set up. And I didn't have the experience working at a retreat center. So when, fast forward, I've gone through this experience, I'm looking at like, okay, I need to make a transition from the bank. What is that going to be? And I was like, well, I want to get experience running retreat centers. I want to feel confident in being able to ask for money to execute that plan.
Mm-hmm.
I had gone to a retreat in Guatemala at this incredible property called Villa Sumaya. It was 12 days, 3 or 4 nights of ayahuasca with the same facilitator and guide who had been working with. And I happened to make good friends with the woman who owns that center. And before I left on that retreat, she came to my door and she was like, Brandon, I want you to know that the garden has spoken to me. And I was like, okay, Wendy, what's it have to say? And she was like, I was walking through the garden and I had this vision of you building something here. And she's like, so I just want you to know that you're always invited back. And I was like, okay, So when all of this came about and I was trying to figure out what my next step was going to be, I was like, I'm going to go work at that center. I'm going to take the opportunity, the invitation, and that's going to be my jumping point, right? So the plan looked like paying off all my debt, saving money, and we executed a plan. I was going to leave my W-2 income. So we were pretty strategic, and the the series of events at the end was pretty interesting. Saved up a bunch of money, paid off my credit cards, had no debt. Then I bought a second house, an investment property, while I still had my W-2 income. The week after it closed and everything was finalized, there was no going backwards in the papers, titles, everything's done. I put in the notice, gave them 2-week notice at my job, quit my job, got married, remodeled the house, rented it out, and left the country. And so that was the beginning of like the next chapter of my life.
I love that, how you talk about having a plan. And so anybody that's listening that does have that experience, you don't need to get there all at once, right? It is a process, right? So what might feel like you need to do something right then and there in the moment, take a step back and put a plan together.
Yeah, like I said, it took me a year and a half, from that first moment of feeling that pressure to actually making a change. But I was ready.
No, such good advice, Brandon. I know myself, I've fallen guilty to that as well, where I had these experiences and like the morning of, I have to make this change. I have to make this change now. And I'm going to tell everybody about this change. And it's almost like a manic episode, So I love the advice of like really take some time and take the 4 days minimum, let your system kind of integrate, come back into homeostasis. I also want to say to the viewers and listeners out there, for me, it's very important is preparation for these experiences. And the more that we can come into these experiences with a regulated nervous system, right, and having some tools for mindfulness, with breathing, with meditation, along with having a support group, and a team of people, or at least a therapist and a trusted friend afterwards to kind of bounce these experiences off of. Because I know, where I faulted and where a lot of people I know, go off path is because they're not prepared. They don't have the support handy, and they get lost in their own soup. And we can kind of get led astray if we don't have somebody holding us accountable and someone that really knows us and what our intentions are. It's very easy to get distracted, right? And to make these decisions, such as leaving a relationship or quitting a job prematurely, and really having, like you said, like this plan in place. And these medicines can really offer us these wonderful, sparks of awareness. But Jeremy, him and I talk about this all the time. Like the awareness is not the transformation, right? The awareness is the first step. And then we need to take these little small incremental changes based on our new awareness, right? And that's where we actually see the transformation in our lives.
Yep. And for me, after I started really exploring the plant medicine world with that intention, I did a fairly good job for a while with doing a lot of like the personal growth and development work, a lot of that kind of, not the best in the world. It was off and on, but in terms of like the breath work, I love doing the ice bath, meditation, things like that. But like the internal world, which is all good and well, but that truly, really, in my experience, will only get you so far. The thing that I had been lacking in my own world until recently was community. I was plugged into what you were doing up in Orlando, Brian, but to the extent at which we spoke every day, and then I'd go do a retreat, but I wasn't like there. I wasn't with you in the process. And it's not until I decided to start the men's group down here and really lean into this idea of connecting with other like-minded brothers and individuals that are looking to grow, looking to heal, looking to be accountable, and just looking to better the world, that really opened up like a flower opening up. Because you can't do it alone, right? Life is tough, and it's incredibly important to have a strong support system, so that you can do all the personal work yourself and you can have these experiences, but then you can go be with other people that can support you through it and grow together. So that's been tremendously important in the evolution of my journey. And I only just now started tapping into that. Like, we're talking, what, Brian, 4 months ago, really? I just started opening up that door. And like, look at here, we're here on this podcast now. Brandon, I met you through Brian and Pedro with the Luminary Tribe group. There's so many different, and I didn't even realize how many amazing groups there are out there. And yet there's still so many men out there and so many people that are struggling to find purpose in their life, to find community, to find a meaning, to move forward. And there's so many outlets and so many opportunities. And I've made it my mission in life to try to meet more people and bring them into the fold and just help expand the tribe further and further. I wanted to ask you, Brandon, let's jump down to Guatemala, the next chapter. This is an appealing thing when you have these experiences and you get into the world. The idea of like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to uproot myself from Western society, right? The rat race, if you will. I'm just going to go down and I'm going to go in the jungle and I'm going to live there for a couple of years. And that could be a very appealing thing for many. Obviously, in many cases, the grass can be greener on the other side. Perspective matters. But take us through what that looked like when you arrived in Guatemala. What did the work look like? What did it do for you personally, spiritually? And then where did it lead you?
Great questions. Guatemala was an incredible experience. And I really appreciate the opportunity that Wendy, the owner of Villa Sumaya, that she gave me. Villa Sumaya it's in the Mayan highlands. It's right on Lake Atitlan. And it can be anywhere between a 4 and an 8 hour drive from Guatemala City. The difficult parts about Guatemala are the traffic, a lot of poverty, right? And the incredible beauty that is there. I mean, the people, when you're on the lake, a lot of the native people that are around are of Mayan descent. There's several different languages that are spoken around the lake. You're exposed to some of their traditional ways of living. And that part was really humbling. Villa Sumaya is incredibly beautiful. It's like a 5-star resort. It's on the lake, private dock. Every room has a view of the lake and the volcanoes that are across the lake from it. It's picturesque, massive jungle gardens everywhere. About as comfortable, I think, as you can be where it's located. And so there's what the work looked like. They weren't really sure what I was coming to do at the beginning, and I wasn't sure either. Wendy had this vision of me building something, and so I started kind of getting a sense of what's going on with the grounds. They had their general manager was managing the upkeep and maintenance of the property and the buildings, and he needed some help, so I started to take a look and made a list of things that needed repair and work. And I had a background in doing some remodel and construction work, so that was kind of a natural place for me to reside. I did end up helping construct a temescal, which was the thing that Wendy saw in her vision. So I helped design and make that project come to completion. Though it was really built by like a professional bricklayer. This
Oh,
guy came in and
I
built
was
it all
about to
out of
call you
brick.
Brandon the Builder, but I'll hold off for a second.
Yeah. I was more just the director of that show. I wasn't actually the one swinging hammers, but did help with the design and ideas and bring it into reality. We also built a swimming platform. That so there were a couple marks that I left after my time there, and I ended up staying for about 6 months, um, really right at 6 months, and it was it was kind of bittersweet. One of the beautiful things that I got exposed to there and I got to do a lot of was working with this gentleman, Tomas Cholotillo, who's a he's like a Mayan priest, and the practice that they have is working with the Nawa. Is that saying it right? The Nawa, and their cosmovision and the fire. He's like people there, the tourists that would come through would call him like a fire shaman, right? Of course, that's not how they talk about it, but it gives people kind of a perspective. He channels through the fire, and he does these incredible readings with the day of your birth and the day that the ceremony is happening. And I had an experience with him that was extremely transformational. No medicine, it's just you and the fire, right? And incredible honor to get to work with him, and the number of ceremonies I got to participate in while I was there. That was one of the really big gifts that I got. And he helped me as I was getting ready to transition to what was going to be next, um, helped me kind of feel confident in making that decision. And I chose at the kind of that 6 month mark. Wendy was asking me if I wanted to partner with her in the business. And she's like, you should stay. This is great. We love you. And I wasn't ready for that. I wanted more experience. I wanted to go down to Peru. I wanted to diet. I had some things on my list. And I wanted to see how another retreat center operated. I got to understand how hers was structured, what the business model looked like, and I wanted more experience. Um, so at that kind of 6 month mark, I transitioned down to Peru.
Had you been down to Peru before? How did you find out? Where did you figure out where you were going to go? Is that something that they recommended?
Yeah, it wasn't recommended by them, but the facilitator and practitioner that I had been sitting with ayahuasca, he lived in Peru for 15 years. As a Westerner, I got very lucky. I got very lucky to kind of adopt a mentor and a teacher that had really immersed himself in traditional indigenous practices. And he had lived in Peru for 15 years, so he had very well connected, and really he exposed himself to the traditions kind of long before it became popular. He was down there in the early 90s, and um, so he had relationships, and I had been gone for 6 months. We hadn't really talked, but I sent him a message and I was like, hey, I want to go to Peru. I want to go diet. I'm ready. And he's like, okay, here's Orlando's contact information. And so he connected me with Orlando Chucandama, who lives outside of Tarapoto. And Orlando is a Quechua Lamista, and his grandfather, Aquilino Chucandama, was a really well-respected curandero in the path of vegetalismo in that area. And um, my teacher had been working with him for, at that point, I don't know, 15 years. So knew him really well. and was the place that he recommended going to diet out of all the people that he was connected to down there. So I reached out to Orlando. I was like, I want to come down. He's like, okay, how long do you want to diet for? And I said, a month. And I don't know how familiar you are with the process of dieta,
I'm not.
but
Do
okay.
tell.
A month is an ambitious start. And I'm glad I started with a month because I think had I started shorter, I don't know if I would have, I don't know if I would have done a month later or not.
Is this dieta, the diet, is this also in conjunction with working with all these other plant medicines, or did you go down there strictly for the diet purposes, or did you do it in all these other contexts?
Um, how to unpack that? So the dieta in the world of ayahuasca, you hear dieta in kind of two ways. You'll hear about a preparation diet or the dieta before a ceremony,
Hmm.
which is, each practitioner has their own kind of understanding of what that needs to be. You should always check with your practitioner, whoever's facilitating, on what their diet or their dieta protocols are leading up to a ceremony, right? Some of the common things are no salt, no sugar, no sex, no pork, right? What you kind of commonly hear. A plant medicine or a master plant dieta is a different experience altogether. You're spending a week, 2 weeks, a month, 3 months, 6 months in a process of exposing yourself to different plants, master plants, or they call them teacher plants. And there's many of them. This tradition, the Quechua-Lamistas and the Pathovegetalismo, and the Shipibo Canibo, both have very similar orientations to the process of dieta and how the connection to those plants strengthens you, supports you, can heal you. And then if you're in an apprenticeship or a path of study with the medicine, it also supports you in the ceremony. And you establish these relationships with these plants through this process of dieta. What it looks like in practice is you go out to Orlando's land, um, you have an opening night or two of ceremony to ground you, and then that second night of ceremony is going to be the opening of the diet. And that kind of happens inside of the ceremony space when you're drinking ayahuasca. After that ceremony, you get taken out to a tambo, is what they're called, and they're little huts. Different centers have different versions of tambos. Here at Orlando's, they're very rustic. You have 4 posts in the ground. You have a platform that your bed and your mattress is on. You've got a mosquito net around that and a thatch roof. There's no walls. There's no floor. You are one with the jungle out there. And you stay in your tambo in isolation. You don't communicate with anybody else. And it's really about slowing down the body, slowing down the mind. And you generally, that first morning, that first day, when you wake up, you will start the relationship with whatever plant or plants you're going to be dieting. That's how they refer to it. You're dieting these plants. For me, that first diet was a tea, Bobinsana, Bachufa, Kame, Kijuwiki, Renako. And it's like this kind of strengthening dieta, right? To take these barks in and kind of strengthen your core. And that tea I drank every morning. And, they give you a cup and you have to drink a cup of it. I had these big bleeders with me that were there. And so I just poured myself some every morning. And then you're in isolation, you're in the jungle, you're drinking these plants. And these ones particularly were not overtly strong in the sense that they're not psychedelic. And it's not like you drink them and you are makes you hot or makes you cold. It doesn't have these don't have that kind of overt effect, right? And then your food is restricted. So I was eating once or twice a day, And I had committed to a month-long diet, so I was going to be in isolation for a month. And um, and then during those weeks, I would have 2 or 3 nights of ayahuasca ceremony by myself in my tambo, right? So you're drinking these plants during the day, you're letting the plants just kind of do their thing, and then, every other night or every other couple of nights, Orlando will come and serve you ayahuasca and maybe sing to you a little bit, but let you be in your tambo. So really, you're being serenaded by the jungle, by the sounds, and the idea is that you're becoming as plant-like as possible, so that you can connect with the spirit of those plants. You're establishing a relationship with those plants. When you establish that relationship, you understand how those plants work inside of your body. Then, as a practitioner, you can bring them forward into the ceremony, right? This diet being my first time, I didn't really know what to expect. And I remember being at the end of my first week there. I just spent 7 days. It's hot and muggy, and you can't use toothpaste. All I'm getting fed are boiled potatoes, boiled rice, boiled plantains, or like porridge. There's no salt in any of it. There's no flavor in any of it. And I was like, what is even happening here? I got upset. I was like, this is like, I could have gotten a better vacation for much cheaper,
Yeah, right. You're like, this is a little bit unreasonable. So 7 days into this, you're feeling that. Was there a point that you got used to it or even started enjoying it? Because I can imagine after doing that for a full month, you probably would feel amazing on the other side of it. No?
It was that like eighth or ninth day, I'm sitting there and I'm questioning my decisions, I'm like, what kind of mistake did I make here? Like, what is happening? And then I realized I somehow became aware of my thought pattern and my consciousness. And I started to see how the thoughts that I was having, the thoughts that I was having were connected by these threads. And they weren't just random. And it was that moment that I was sitting, I can distinctly remember the moment sitting on the side of that bed when I realized that the plants were working. And it was working like in my subconscious. It was working in my thought patterns. And I started to have, as soon as I realized it, I started to have wild dreams. Dreams about experiences I had when I was young, 3 and 4 years old. And then all of this like unpacking started to happen. Dreams of specific people, things that I had like energetic ties to, that people I hadn't thought about in 20 years. And so all of a sudden, like the medicine opened up. The medicine of those plants started to open up. And your dream time really turns on and becomes super vivid. You'll take naps during the day and you'll go into a dream and you'll come out of it. You'll go back into that dream and pick up right where it left off. And a lot of the work in the diet actually happens in the dream time. You get tempted in your dreams. I was told, Orlando told me, he was like, you can't break your diet in your dreams either. So you can't have sex and you can't have any sugar. And I wasn't tempted by sex in my dreams, but I was tempted by sugar. I had these dreams where I'd be walking through a big room and all these tables were filled with like cake. Just different pieces of cake all over all these tables in this massive room. And I had to walk through this like corridor of desserts everywhere, But it's the being tempted. Like the medicine is kind of tempting you. It's testing you.
Were these like lucid dreams where you felt like you had control? Because obviously,
Oh yeah.
yeah. So you were feeling within the dream the ability to deal with that temptation and then overcome that. When you started having them, did you succumb to the temptation? Did you have the cake, or was it like immediate that through the work it became like you're conscious of it? Like I'm going to steer clear of that even in my dreams.
No, I was aware in the dream. I can remember being like in the dream and thinking, "Oh, I can't have any of this." Another one, I was handed a milkshake, and it was like somebody had,
Drink it, Brandon. Drink it.
yeah, exactly. Somebody had like handed me this milkshake, and I was like, I'm not even supposed to have this. I can remember thinking that, like, I'm not even supposed to have this, right? And that one, I think I was a little bit closer because it was like in my hand, but I didn't drink it in the dream. Um, but that was really starting to see, okay, how the diet is working you out, right? And then at that point, 2 weeks in, you're still having ayahuasca ceremonies, 2 or 3 nights a week, and those ceremonies get more and more intense because you've been dieting, you're losing, I was losing weight, and so your sensitivity just increases like crazy. So those ceremonies that are normally 4 6 hours become 7 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours, 12 hours, right? So
Mm.
you drink medicine as the sun is going down, and you're still on this roller coaster ride when the sun is coming up at the end, and you're just getting worked by the plants, getting worked by the plants, and it was that was one of the most incredible experiences I had. I'll kind of wrap it by saying the big lesson that I got out of that diet was the the like embodied awareness that we are not our minds. It became very clear to me, and I had this distinct understanding of my relationship with my mind, that the mind is not who we are, but that it's a tool that we're given, and we have to practice and exercise our strength to control the mind and
Mm.
not let the mind drive the show. And so that was the big, like, one of the big things that I got out of that diet, and it came at the end of a very long night of ceremony, where I was kind of broken and on my knees, and but an incredible gift, you know.
So
Amazing.
powerful, Brandon. It sounds like one big like ego recalibration, and the
Yeah,
plants kind of like worked you into a place of just firm awareness of who you are.
yeah.
And I'm curious. So like now we are fast forward today in your life. Are these lessons? Are these experiences? How do they affect you today? Are you still in this place of awareness from your mind? Do you struggle with that a little bit?
I mean, I'm human, right? We
Sure.
all are. And I'll say that that awareness has never left me. And it's something that I've brought forward in my coaching work and my client work. It's something that starts to live through us, right? We have these experiences, you go through these ceremonies, and whether it's the difficult ones or the beautiful ones, somehow are carrying that with us, right? It becomes part of your walk when you move through the world. And does that mean that I'm completely conscious of my monkey mind, or in 100% control of it all the time? No, right? Though they are tools in the tool belt, right? It's tools in the tool belt.
What practices are you working with today to keep that sharp, to keep the mind sharp? I mean, for me, it's, again, I mentioned it earlier, the breath work, journaling, the community. I know you've been involved in many different communities. Let's talk about that for a little while, right? The Psychedelic Society, I believe it is, and then the other organization, the Steward, the group down here in South Florida. How have those groups helped you, maintain that awareness that you've had, and keep that consistent in your life?
It kind of goes back to what you were mentioning earlier about the power of community. One of the taglines that I've adopted, I was not the originator of this, but I certainly carry it, is community is medicine, or community is the medicine, right?
Mm.
And my involvement with the South Florida Psychedelic Society was really a passion project and somewhat of an experiment. when I was in Portland, I was part of the as part of the Portland Psychedelic Society, which is a very large organization and very well organized. And moving to South Florida, which this is about 5 years ago now, or coming up on 5 years for me, I was surprised that there wasn't a similarly organized group that was putting on events, that was advocating for, things on the state level. And so as I was kind of checking around what's happening in South Florida, there was a Facebook group, the South Florida Psychedelic Society, but it was dormant essentially. Um, there were a couple hundred people in there, no events happening. No events had happened for like 2.5 years. And so I started to like post a little bit. I was testing the water, seeing if there's anybody alive in there, or is it all bots and spam? Like what's going on? And and then I got inspired. I had gone down to Peru and came back from a diet, and I was like, all right, I'm ready to engage with community. And so I took the opportunity to kind of reignite that group. Ended up growing that group. Now we're over 1,600 members in that Facebook group. And for the last 2 years, we've run events. We've had a monthly event called Educate and Integrate. That's been paused for the moment, the kind of the beginning of this year. Things have been on pause as we're kind of reimagining what we want that group to really do or be. But it's mostly an educational platform, right? And bringing awareness and consciousness. And part of what I was seeing in South Florida is it's a little bit like the Wild Wild West. There's a lot of people offering things down here, and I don't think that a lot of people have context or awareness of even the right questions to ask to know if a group is the right group for them.
Yep.
And so, the mission around the South Florida Psychedelic Society was just to create awareness and safety for people.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of people also that come from a place of maybe addiction with various whatever drugs or alcohol or other things, and they have these experiences with psychedelics, and then they move and they basically change their addiction, or they channel that from where they're having a problem with, and they become addicted to the medicine, right? And they start using it as a way to replace the other addiction. And they start going to ceremonies all the time and getting really, really deep in the medicine, and then not doing any of the work that's required to actually integrate it. And that could be another dangerous path as well, when you just constantly take medicine all the time and don't do the actual work that's required to, make the changes in your life to, reap the benefits of that. So it's something that I've seen for sure.
Want to give Brian a chance to chime in if he wants to say anything on that.
Sure. Yeah. No. First, I want to say thank you for sharing your story. I don't know much about the deep diet that's in Peru, but I'm fascinated by it. I'm very called to this path, and I'd love to connect with you as well when we're off the podcast here. I know I acquired some land in Puerto Rico late last year, and my dreams and my current manifestation right now is to open up a retreat center down there. And a lot of the topics you've topped on, I'm in the middle of thinking about this right now. So I love how the universe kind of puts us together with the right people at the right time. Even the name of your mentor, Orlando, right? I live in Orlando. So I'd love to connect with that as well. And yeah, no, everything you said resonated with me, and it's such a powerful journey how we all find our own way in this path. And I think, but the one common thread, like we've all talked about, is any of us can go to the ceremony, right? Drinking the cup and taking the medicine is the easy part. It's what happens after that. And it's with anything, like if you go to college or you study and you learn something new, or you take up a hobby, like if you're not practicing, you're not taking these micro moments in your life, right? We're not microdosing the mind, on a daily level. We're not going to see these changes that we really wish to see for ourselves in the world. And I love how you talked about community, and that's where, we're the medicine, right? We are the medicine. And it's so important to really be a part of a community, to have people to bounce, our ideas off of where we are at off of, which just kind of helps us. We all learn and grow from each other, and without, alone we can only go so far, right? But together we can, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, absolutely. And my invitation to any of the listeners is, surround yourself with people that you are inspired by. You know, even if you're not the person that's meditating every day, but if there's something that you like about those people around you that are, just continue to show up around them. Show up to, a cold plunge or a nice bath or, a breathwork session, and just start to get some exposure and, let that, uh, a little bit through osmosis, right? They say if you're in a room of five millionaires, you'll become the sixth. But if you're, around, I don't know what the other version of that would be on the other side, but you don't want to be on the other side, right? Like, you surround yourself with the people that inspire you. And I think that alone can really help us when things are challenging, right? I've
Mm.
myself have gone through challenges in the last year that have really tested my faith, my spirituality, my practices, and community is the thing that's really um, kept me going
Yep.
and helped me keep my head up and my eyes forward, you know.
Yep. Community and accountability. The transformation really lives in, like you said, Brian, not the experiences, not the aha moments or the awareness. It lives in how we move that forward, in the work that we do, the relationships that we build, and then just how we show up each and every day, and how we could add value to those around us and the world around us. And that's really where the path that we're on. And it's been such a pleasure, man, getting the opportunity to learn about your story. Resonated with me on a very, very deep level as well. I'm not quite as far along on the path as you guys are, but every day I just add a little bit more and more and keep moving in that direction. And I know it's just only begun, and we got great things on the horizon for us.
Absolutely. I
Mm.
want to tie up one thing. We talk a lot about integration in plant medicine work. It's kind of a buzzword, and integration coaches. And I was in a conversation a few weeks ago, and the term after action was expressed. And apparently, this is a military term. I was never in the military, so it's not something that I was aware of. But I really liked it in relationship to how we take this work into our lives. Integration to me was not capturing really what is needed. Integration is important, and integration feels a little bit passive to me. And I really, from my own experience and outside of plant medicine work, even, where we create those changes in our life that you were just speaking about happen with action.
Hmm.
It's not going to happen accidentally. It's not going to happen if you're just sitting there and wishing for it to happen, right? It takes action. And one of the things that I want to kind of encourage in these conversations in the world of plant medicine, yes, integration is important, and action is what's actually going to bring those changes into your life. Right?
I
So I
hope.
really like this term after action.
Mm.
I want to bring it in and let it sit up next to integration.
Yeah, absolutely. Brandon, before we wrap up here, let our listeners know where they could learn more. What's the best way to connect with you if they'd like to reach out?
Sure, and thank you for the invitation. If you're interested in joining the South Florida Psychedelic Society, you can find us on Facebook. Just search South Florida Psychedelic Society. You'll find us there. You can join request to join the group. You do have to send in a request, and you can ping me on there. You can DM me from Facebook. Is great. I'm happy to be connected with folks. Otherwise, you can email me at Brandon at conscioussolutions.ai if you want to get uh, explorative, you can check out that domain and see what the kind of next chapter of my work looks like over there. But Facebook's a great place to get a hold of me. I'm on Instagram as well, so I'm not too hard to find.
Beautiful. And it looks like I might be seeing you on Saturday for the sweat you told me about. Never been. Sounded very appealing, and I'm hoping that my wife could join as well. Sounds like an experience.
I hope you both can come.
Yeah, for sure. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, and let us know in the comments. We want to know, what was your biggest takeaway from the episode? We always love your feedback. We appreciate you joining us on this journey. Brandon, thanks so much for your time, brother. We appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you for having me, guys.
All right. Our pleasure. Everyone take care. Have a blessed day.
Thanks for tuning in to Microdose the Mind. If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with a friend and help us spread the word about the magic of microdosing. Be sure to follow us on social media for all the latest updates and insights. And remember, while we love our tiny doses, sometimes you just need to go big. Just make sure you're in the right set and setting. Until next time, keep your mind open and ready for growth.